The shame of America. That is what the people of Philadelphia now have to acknowledge when looking at the dire condition of their city. A city once a symbol of development and prosperity is now struggling with an uncontrollable homelessness crisis and decline. Philadelphia, a city known for its historical landmarks and community strength, is now witnessing a social tragedy that the local authorities cannot resolve. The once bustling and vibrant neighborhoods are now filled with tense, homeless people and issues of vice that no one can ignore. In today's video, we will take you to the heart of Philadelphia, where the collapse is not only happening on the small streets, but also affecting an entire community that is gradually losing its way. Get ready to face the harsh and unbelievable truth about what is happening right in the heart of America. You might know every page of history about this place. Philadelphia, the cradle of American independence, where just a few steps will take you to the birthplace of the Declaration of Independence. But it is also in that very place, if you take a different path, you will step into a reality as if from a post-apocalyptic world. Even having heard, seen, and even foreseen the developments, each time witnessing the harsh reality in this place, one cannot help but be shocked. Because the most terrifying thing in Philadelphia does not lie in the destruction, but in the doom loop. A cycle of decline with no escape, pulling everything down to the bottom. Philadelphia now seems to be built up from three layers: waste, inequality, and despair. The heartbreaking thing is, all of this has become too familiar. No one is shocked anymore when they encounter a person sprawled on the roadside, pants down to their knees, head bowed to the ground, swaying like a shadow out of control. Because such images have become a permanent backdrop of urban life. According to the 2025 point-in-time count report by the Philadelphia Office of Homeless Services, the entire city currently has more than 5,191 homeless people, of which nearly 1,000 have to sleep entirely outdoors. That is, without shelter, without temporary accommodation, just the sky, the ground, and a void. Worse still, the number of homeless people outdoors has increased by 38% in just 1 year. Meanwhile, the number of people taking refuge in shelters also increased by 5%. A total of 8,246 people had to seek refuge in the shelter system in the most recent fiscal year. A number that not only indicates the severity of the crisis, but also serves as a warning that the system is overloaded and could collapse at any moment. Not stopping at mere numbers, amidst a city already drowning in waste and despair, the crisis continues to pile up. In July of this year, sanitation workers, over 9,000 people belonging to the city union, went on strike demanding higher wages and improved health insurance. In the span of a week without garbage collection, the city was engulfed in a stench amidst the 90-degree F heat. More than 60 temporary waste collection points were opened, and residents pushed their garbage carts to dispose of waste as if it were an emergency. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The submerged part. Are the homeless people living right in those heaps of garbage, with no place to shelter, no one to help clean up? For them, it is not just foul-smelling, but a torment, like being abandoned creatures in a world without order. Philadelphia today is not just a city. It is a murky mirror reflecting the deepest parts of modern America. A place once born to affirm human dignity, now a place where many lose the most basic thing: to be called by name, to be seen as a human being, not as a moving object on the sidewalk. And with more than 5,000 people being left behind by the system every day, just a few blocks away from the birthplace of the Declaration of Independence, are we witnessing not just the fracture of a city, but of the very values that once earned America its respect? There was a time when Kensington was a neighborhood of the working class. The 70s and 80s, though modest, Kensington was a place one could proudly call home. There, neighbors knew each other. Children happily go to and from school without fear. The police know the names of each household, And those who lived here, as the stories go, carried in their hearts a sense of safety that now exists only in memories. But then everything started to crack. Since the 1990s, when factories closed, jobs disappeared, education budgets were cut, and affordable housing gave way to abandoned row houses, Kensington gradually slid down. No one can pinpoint the moment the city changed colour. But when you return today, Kensington is no longer the Kensington of your faded memories. Nowadays, Kensington is no longer a neighbourhood, but a long post-apocalyptic film. The streets are covered in trash, dangerous medical equipment scattered like dry leaves, shattered glass windows, walls painted with graffiti as if they were messages from hell. Figures stagger like zombies, hunched over, swaying against walls or curled up in the pathways, most of them no longer capable of awareness. According to data from 2025, nearly 60% of the homeless people outdoors in Philadelphia are concentrated around Kensington, which is currently considered the city's most dangerous hotspot. The police are present, but there are not enough personnel or long-term solutions. Non-profit organisations are trying to distribute water, food and medical aid, but such actions are like trying to swim in a flood without knowing where the shore is. The people who once lived here, now moved away, still shudder every time they remember the place they used to call home. No one expected that a neighbourhood once filled with childhood memories would turn into a place where people thank God for having escaped. And for those who still live here, each passing day is a series of days spent in hell. Kensington today is no longer a small mistake, but the consequence of a series of delays, neglect, and withdrawal. It not only exposes the cracks in the welfare system, but is also living proof that once we stop caring, any place can turn into a new Kensington. If you ever believe that the collapse of a city begins with a major event, take a closer look. In Philadelphia, it doesn't come with a bang, but quietly spreads from every bill, every rent increase, every notice of a tax hike. A city that once represented the American dream is now taxing that very dream, to the point where not only the poorest, but even the middle class feel pushed to the margins of life. In the streets covered in uncollected trash, beside the peeling houses, there are people still trying to make ends meet, with an average rent of $1,865 per month. A figure higher than the national average, and which is eating away nearly 1/3 of their monthly income. With a working class family, without inherited wealth or social support, just the cost of rent is enough to make everything else a luxury. Fresh food, medical care, and sometimes even a peaceful night's sleep. And when someone dares to dream of owning a home, they find out it is no longer a dream, but a privilege. The prices of low-end homes have increased by up to 171% over the past 2 decades, while wages have not risen at the same rate. Even in neighbourhoods not far from the centre, the median price has reached over $265,000, with areas like Chestnut Hill exceeding $750,000. Mortgage interest rates are rising, maintenance costs are increasing, and property taxes are up, all creating an invisible wall that young people cannot overcome, while the elderly are completely trapped. Meanwhile, inflation continues to drive up the cost of living. 2.9% in the Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington area, higher than the national average. From fuel to food, from healthcare to education, everything is increasing, except real wages. People no longer feel alive. They feel crushed by the numbers of expenses. The middle class, once the backbone of the city, has now become the most vulnerable group. They are not poor enough to receive assistance, but they are also not rich enough to weather the crisis. They stand in between, trapped in 2 worlds and gradually being worn down bit by bit. Philadelphia today is not only facing a housing crisis, but also a crisis of trust in the system, in the government, and in the promise that everyone has a chance. Are we living in a country where the dream is only for those rich enough to buy it, while those who create value are left behind in the whirlpool of prices, taxes, and oblivion? Is the American dream now so expensive that it has become a luxury privilege for the upper class? There is a heartbreaking paradox present in the heart of Philadelphia. While the city lights still shine brightly on the skyscrapers and the billboards outside still flicker like in the 80s, just beneath the surface, a sense of unease permeates every breath of daily life. That is not a distant worry, but a reality quietly eroding the people's faith. The belief that they are living in a safe place, worthy of being called home. In the first week of July this year, the city recorded nearly 60 serious street conflicts, causing many injuries and some unable to return home. Although the overall numbers show that the rate of violence has decreased by more than 14% compared to last year, on the ground, the feeling of fear has not subsided. Residents recount that there are nights when unusual noises outside keep them awake until dawn. Many elderly people lock their doors earlier, and children no longer play alone in the backyard like they used to. And in areas that were once very peaceful, like Gray's Ferry or West Kensington, the current silence no longer means safety. It is a kind of unsettling quiet, where everyone tries to appear normal in a world that's becoming increasingly unpredictable. Amid all that, there are those who cannot leave. They are the owners of small grocery stores, the elderly living on pensions, and families who have been attached to the neighborhood for a lifetime. One shop owner shared that he is no longer worried about losing property, but what he fears most is the instability that makes customers hesitant, the community gradually shrinking, and trust dissipating. Although the city has implemented control and support programs, including community security patrols and unarmed night watch models at public transport stations, these measures are still not enough to soothe the memories that residents carry with them every day. Perhaps what tires people the most is not the numbers, but the feeling of having to live in a prolonged state of vigilance. A mother who once lived in the Fairmount Park area recalls, "When I was a child, I walked to school every morning, stopping to buy donuts at the corner, and there was nothing to worry about. But now, I take my grandson to school, and my heart is never at ease." The rupture between the past and the present makes many people feel like they are living in a different city, where everything seems familiar, yet so strange. Positive numbers can make the report look better, but a city is not evaluated by charts, but by the real feelings of the people living in it. If every step outside is accompanied by anxiety, if the elderly no longer dare to sit on their porches, if children cannot play in the park before sunset, then perhaps what needs to be reduced is not just the rate, but the gap between the feeling of being protected and the reality of having to defend oneself every day. How can we call ourselves a civilized society if those who have lived here their entire lives, building communities, paying taxes, raising the next generation, have to live in fear right in the place they once called home? When night falls over Philadelphia, the dim lights from the shelters, also known as shelters, begin to glow. In theory, it is a safe place, a shelter for those who have nowhere else to go. But if you step inside, you will feel it clearly. This is not a destination to start anew, but merely a temporary stop on the precarious journey of survival. According to the Point in Time Count 2024 report, Philadelphia currently has over 4,215 people residing in shelters and transitional housing. At first glance, it seems like a positive sign. But at the same time, there are still 976 people sleeping outdoors, an increase of 38% compared to last year. That is, while the shelter system is trying to expand, the wave of people slipping out of the safety net is increasing even faster. This number not only reflects the overload, but also reveals a heartbreaking reality. Many people do not want, or cannot, step into places that are supposed to be shelters. This number not only reflects the overload, but also reveals a heartbreaking reality. Many people do not want to, or cannot, enter places that were once considered sanctuaries. Inside those shelters, more than 370 families with children are living together, with about 1,158 people, plus more than 2,300 individuals without any relatives nearby. Inside those shelters, more than 370 families with children are living with around 1,158 people, plus over 2,300 individuals without any relatives nearby. The space is cramped, lacking privacy and devoid of tranquility. Many people recount that sleep is a luxury while stress is constant, like the sound of an old fan screeching all night. An elderly woman once shared, "I don't blame them, but this place doesn't make me feel like a living human being. I just feel like I'm temporarily existing in a box waiting to be opened." What's even more frightening is that about 43% of those who entered shelters in 2023 were experiencing homelessness for the first time. That is, this is not just the consequence of a minority group left behind, but a new wave. Those who were once stable, once had jobs, once rented homes, now falling and getting stuck in a system not strong enough to lift them back up. Shelter cannot replace stability, but it is becoming the default destination for more and more Americans as all other options have closed off. In the Kensington area, which accounts for nearly 35% of the city's homeless population living outdoors, the problem is even more severe. Many people are forced to leave temporary camps and are taken to shelters in more distant areas. But just after a few days, they returned outside because they couldn't stand the living conditions, the geographical distance, or the feeling of being controlled. Instead of helping them escape the streets, this system merely shifts them from sleeping outdoors to sleeping in temporary rooms, without any further solution. The authorities have made efforts. They invested in building more shelters, expanding services, and implementing plans to support the elderly and women with young children. But the root issue remains unchanged. Shelter is a support, not a foundation. When there is no stable job, no long-term psychological support, no real community connection, then shelter is just a thin raincoat in the winter storm. Can we call it a humane system if more and more people enter the shelter, but no one can find a real way out from there? There is an invisible yet starkly clear gap between the stories you once heard about the American dream, where anyone who works hard has a chance, and the reality of Philadelphia today. Amid the dim lights and the disjointed sounds of a fragmented life, many still believe in a small glimmer of hope, even if it exists only as the last embers of a fire. Among the thousands of people sleeping under the overpass and in makeshift tents, up to 70% once had stable jobs. They were workers, drivers, waiters, or even teachers. They didn't lose hope because they weren't working enough, but because the system stopped functioning when they needed it. The story of Mr. John, who used to be a maintenance worker in a large office building, serves as a testament to that. After being laid off without reason, he lost his high salary but did not receive reasonable unemployment benefits. Sometime later, without a home or a bed to sleep in, he had to live in an old car parked by the roadside. He said, "I believed in my work, believed in the law, believed in the community. But when I needed them, those things disappeared." He said, "I believe in my work, believe in the law, believe in the community. But when I needed them, those things disappeared." It's not just middle-aged men. A single mother, Maria, who used to work as a nurse at the hospital, had to quit her job when her daughter needed surgery. Tuition fees increased, medical bills exceeded their ability to pay, and the rent became too expensive. Both mother and child use a room that is barely enough to fit a bed. She shared, "I don't want my child to see me scared. I once believed that talent and effort would be enough to get us through. I used to believe that talent and effort would be enough to get us through. But that dream has gradually faded, like the last candle burning in a stormy night. But that dream has gradually faded away, like the last candle burning in a stormy night. Philadelphia is packing many fragments of dreams into a backpack along with thousands of people. But in the end, how many pieces will follow them as they step out of the shelter, out of the car, out of their daily struggles? When the American dream exists only in distant hopes, the question softly arises. Can a country proud of opportunity allow tens of thousands to grow up amidst the grey streets without the chance to dream? In many places, urban redevelopment is a symbol of hope, a commitment to urban renewal, modernizing infrastructure and revitalizing communities. But in Philadelphia, these redevelopment projects seem to be used as a glossy coat to cover up a painful reality: the quiet yet decisive displacement of the poor from the urban center. In less than a decade, many neighborhoods once filled with affordable rental homes where working-class families lived have been transformed into high-rise apartment buildings, boutique coffee shops, and organic supermarkets. Areas like Point Breeze, Brewery Town, and even Kensington have been successively sought after by investors. House prices skyrocketed from under $0,000 for a small apartment to over $300,000 in just a few years. Local residents who cannot keep up with the rising prices are forced to leave, making way for a wave of wealthier people from elsewhere. The irony is that those who once lived, worked, and paid taxes in those neighborhoods have no place in the city's promising development plan. When the old houses are demolished, they not only lose a shelter, but also the sense of belonging. Because the new affordable housing developments are actually not meant for them. The prices are still too high, the approval processes are too strict, and the living spaces are managed according to unfamiliar standards. Behind every number about development, there is a family that has to move away. Behind each newly inaugurated project, there is an old community disintegrating. And when the housing support system is not expanded accordingly, when the temporary housing areas are overloaded, then the resettlement policy is no longer a solution, but a tool that gradually suffocates the living space of the vulnerable classes. The city can boast that they are greening the urban areas, reducing crime by redesigning public spaces, or attracting investment to create jobs. But is it still justice when those who once built that city now have to live under overpasses, in tents, or leave the place they have been attached to their whole lives? Philadelphia was once the birthplace of American independence, a place where values such as freedom, justice, and opportunity were enshrined in the Charter. But it is precisely in that place today that many Americans are living in a state of homelessness, hopelessness, and despair. The once bustling neighborhoods have become wastelands, where people drift past each other without being able to name their faith. This city is not only a hotspot of crisis, but also a test of collective conscience. Because if Philadelphia, with its glorious history and symbolic status, can also become a forgotten city, then what awaits other places? If you feel that this story touches something within you, please share this video to spread awareness, so that no one thinks this issue is someone else's. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss stories that explore and reflect the true America from the perspective of everyday life. This video is created entirely for educational, exploratory, and social documentation purposes. All content, images, and comments are used under the principle of fair use to serve community awareness. We do not represent any political organization, nor do we support or oppose any individual or party. The shared information is neutral and aims to encourage constructive discussion, not to promote violence or extremist actions.